Hi, how you doing? So I'm travelling right down the main street that leads into Oxford that will take me to St Aldate's, and from there I'll be able to go into the old buildings, the university colleges, all the colleges that make up Oxford University. There is no Oxford University as such, it's all the colleges that make up the teaching and training centres, the lecture centres and so on. So in a minute it'll be all packed with students around us, and then visitors come to Oxford. Oxford's a very popular city to be in. This is basically a very lowland, so we're very close to the level of the Thames here. And that's the continuation of the Thames from where I live. So I've been on the boat on the Thames that leads from Abingdon into Oxford. It takes about 3 hours to go 6 or 7 miles, but it's a very pleasant thing to do, really. This is Tom's Tower. We're going to be going the opposite direction. This way, the building says Lloyds Bank. Look at this lovely old building they occupy here. Mortise and tenon throughout. It's quite remarkable. You can see. Oh man, I wouldn't like to say how many posters they've got, but they have got the posters. Architecture is an amazing thing, really, and a lot of things are about dreams, even if you never actually achieve your dream. If you open the books, often you'll dream of what's inside, but inside yourself you don't really believe that you will actually achieve what your dream is telling you about. But we dream. This was one of the best books ever written, I think, helping people to work their brain to accomplish drawing. Well, this is just 7 miles from where I live, and it's very different than my life. It's very nice to visit. It's not much of my life.
Thank you so much.
But people are so nice. Quite amazing place, really. Just amazing. Because I'm wandering past and I'm looking more closely at some features that are woodworking. Doors, doors, doors. Every different kind of door you care to imagine. Most people will walk past the doors and never give the doors a second glance. They wander through them, not realizing that some of these doors will be 200 and 300 years old. Handmade, quarter sawn oak, and that disturbs me really a little bit. So this is Oxford. This is Oxford. Here we're coming onto a very, very famous building, probably one of the most famous buildings in Oxford. This is the Camera. It's a library, a very special library really. I'm on the wrong side of it right now. Cobblestone streets. I grew up on cobblestone streets in many of the areas where I lived and worked. Going to the tops of these buildings, some of them really do give you a very remarkable view of Oxford. And its architecture, its diversity, its inheritance really. Another thing that's remarkable is the branch of that tree. Look how it elbows its way into our culture, and how people walk by it but never really look at it, never notice it. And I think it's true of the buildings in some measure too.
What Mourinho be saying? Like, he'll be saying, "I'll give up," won't he?
Lots of things that are very natural around us, and yet we walk past them and don't even notice them. And the remarkable thing about them is that they're amidst stone and concrete and tarmac, pavement, and they are so valuable to softening the impact of the harshness and hardness of our world. And that's what I'm always looking for. I'm looking for greenery to shade under and soften the impact on my life. Greenery, greenery, I love my greenery. Look at this column here. I'm out on the edge of some willows here and some pines, and this is, part of the fascination for me. I'll give you a bit of a clue. See this one? Let me give you a sight at what I'm looking at. So here we've got a cone that's still green. So this is going to be next year's harvest. So this cone here has opened up, it's fulfilled its purpose. What does it say? Unless a seed fall to the earth and die, it remains alone. But here there are probably 80 or 90 seeds inside this fir cone. So this will deposit those leaves. The one next to it is not this year's, this is next year's deposit that will come in another year's time. So that's what I'm looking at. These things, these little wings, they look like angel wings here. That's what carries the seed. So this has opened up its I don't know what they would call them, these little stems. The sun's warming it, open them up, and then these will drop and they will be deposited in the soil underneath. That white dot looks like an egg to me, so I'm going to take a quick look underneath there and see just what that is. Let me have a look. Here it is. So it's already opened. You can see it's all cracked on the outside, and this probably was not eaten. This is probably the chick itself. With birds, when the chick is hatching, it has to break its way out of its shell itself. You can't help it, I can't help it. The chick, part of its coming into the world its survival is to break out of its own shell. Another little quirk of nature. But just warming himself or herself, enjoying that little protection and the sun beating on it. It's really getting quite cold now in the mornings, about freezing, 1-2 degrees. Then the rose hips come in, variety of different fruits. I'm working on a project really. I'm working on a crib, a cot for my granddaughter and for woodworking masterclasses. So there are some issues that come to mind when we start working on things like children's furniture and cots and things like that, you, all of us have to think through. So I did quite a bit of research before I even got to this stage, and this is just about a good idea of how much legislation has been written about safety with children, but when it comes to the cot there really isn't that much to it. It's quite simple really. You don't want gaps that are too big that you can get the baby's head through, slip through the base, you know, the mattress, the under support for the mattress, things like that. So it's not really too complicated. It seems from what I have put together here that as long as I don't have any gaps bigger than 60 millimeters, about 2 3/8 of an inch in reality, in real money, then there's not much beyond that. There are heights that we have to get right and things like that. And what I've decided is to go with the non-sliding front, the adjustable front where it drops down to put the baby in, things like that. I worked out that the USA has, in 2011, developed legislation that said no more drop side cots, because we've had 32 deaths over a given period of babies dying in the cot as a result of drop sides. So no more drop sides, which I think is fine. And I wish to express to you, I think we as individual woodworkers have to make our own responsible assessment, and I've assessed that I don't want to have a drop side cot for my granddaughter or grandson. So that's where I'm going. If you don't know what a silver birch leaf looks like, this is it. So this is part of tree identification with me. I'm no expert really, but I think it's important to start to identify trees in the leaves, because it's the product you work with. And I find it still fascinating to me to work with the trees and see them in their natural habitat. A birch leaf, that's the shape of the leaf. It's got the single vein down the middle and fairly equidistant veins. The main veins going off the main arterial vein there. And then inside, well, let's take a look here. This is where you start seeing the leaf changing in its colour from the vivid green to the yellows. That's preeminent at the moment on some of the trees. The main stem there is rotting around. It's pretty much circumnavigated the tree, this rot, so it's on its last legs. It's got another 2 or 3 years to go, I suppose. There you see the natural colour of this tree, and that's birch. That's very typical of birch. Has these little undulations in its stem as it grows. Way up there, that's the natural colour right there. That's it, as good as it gets. I love the seeds. I love the pink tinge that comes on them at this time when you see them change from their bright lime green to pink. So I just picked these up. This one I took off the branch, obviously, but it's green, and then this pair here have already started their decay level. But these are so lovely to look at with their little veins and such. When I'm working on a prototype, I have my drawing, which I've worked on, which is right down here, and then I've got my actual wood. This is the pine that I'm using. I often use pine because it's fairly inexpensive. It's not cheap, but it's less expensive than, say, some of the hardwoods. And it's easier to work in many cases, so it makes it less hard on my body when I'm working. But I have got things mapped out, and the lines vary quite markedly. So I have these lines working on this, and it's funny really, because while I'm pushing these lines and looking for the exact contour that I want, I'm reminded of, say, a swan's neck. And I get, because I'm out in nature quite a lot, and I'm looking for these graceful shapes, and it could be the bend of a tree in a prevailing wind, it could be the flexing of a sapling, but it could also just as easily be, in this case, a swan's breast here, when it pushes its forepart forward and pulls its neck back. But here, so I've got these long shapes, and in the middle of this, which you probably wouldn't see, I've already picked a line that I want to work to. But then I have to come down to the real nitty-gritty with this, which is this joint area here. I've got to get this right. So I take my piece of wood, which still hasn't yet been planed, this is still the rough sawn, and I place it onto the end here, and then I will draw around it to the angle I've got. So let me give you a quick look. See if you can see down here. So I've got this curve here, so I want my angle for this top rail. This is a semi sleigh bed, if you like, so I've got this angle here following the general arc on this one side, and then I mark the parallel side on this side, mark my overall height here and the underside on this side here. Then I squared it across, and now I can start working on this shape here, because what exactly do I want? Well, I want this to come into a shape like this, and I want this to kick back down here. I'm not ready to cut this yet, to shape this, because I want to do all my joinery on this first, but there will be the kind of shape I'm looking for when I come to the final shaping of it. So I'm getting that down on the wood, I'll get that down on my drawing at some point. When I finally do it, then it'll become the exact shape that I want, and that's what you'll be working to. You'll get this shape, and hopefully you'll like it. There are a few straggling blackberries left. One or two, not many. They're small but sweet. Well, here I am again on my bike, just been for a walk around the lake. So I padlocked my bike and took a walk with my bins, my binoculars, in search of what I can't see with the naked eye. And bird watching has always been a part of my life, no matter where I've lived. When I lived in Texas, of course, I had the most incredible journey for about 25 years, just discovering orioles and all the different sandhill cranes flying over, all the different bird species. Wow, that was quite an experience, with all the hummingbirds and just so many varieties. And then coming back to Britain, when I lived in the north, it was very different, because I was fairly used to the birds, but coming to the south I was not used to them. I wasn't used to the migration patterns here and things like that. So it's been an eye-opener for me to rediscover some birds that I knew of but never saw, and I like that, really. I like coming here to this lake. It's so near to my house that it's, and then I've got the river, the Thames too, so it does give me a new opening. But a lot of the birds that fly over, I still don't know what they are. I don't know who they are. I don't know where they're from, where they're going. But I hear little chirps now and again, and I think to myself, I catch a little tail, just the briefest glimpse of some of them, especially the warblers, where I don't get long enough nor enough sound to try to identify them. But that's the exciting thing. Bird watching is just like woodworking in many ways, because you never really discover the whole of it. You only discover what is revealed to you, what you experience, and that's what makes it so fascinating. After 53 years of working with wood, I still am trying to understand, trying to fathom its grain, trying to get deep inside it, to see more of it, to understand more, to find out what makes it work. So now I've had my walk, I have a book with me, and I'm going to read for a little while. It's a novel, and I've been reading it, and so I'm on the last few pages. I've got another 50 or 60 pages to find out who done it, and so that's where I am with this one. The author is Peter May, if you're interested. I've never read anything by him or watched anything by him before. A lot of noise overhead, helicopters, and that's a small jet going over. But I'm just going to take a few minutes and enjoy myself. See you in a bit. This is really what I mean when you wait quietly and then suddenly two swans come into your life. They greet one another in front of you. And you feel part of nature, really. You can see how they are in your life. Whether it's a leaf falling or a swan swimming by, there's a certain poetry to it that you can't capture almost any other way but by seeing it. Even through the lens, it's not quite the same. But it's very good for me to be here, and I think that's the important thing. So I'm very grateful, really. I am so grateful. Geese seldom seem in harmony, and peace eludes them in the nature of things. The tern skims the surface of the lake, lowers its bottom beak and taps the surface. I listen for peace amongst the constant cries of gulls and fine nod in their constant dives, swoops and swerves. The paired-off coots bob their heads and dive, leaving a plop and a swirl of water to trace their departure. The seagulls mob the rising coot to steal her catch in greedy beaks, razor sharp. The gulls depart as the coot dives again to hide from their razor-sharp beaks. She rises, and the seagulls mob again and again and again. She dives, they mob, she dives, they mob, she dives, they mob. Greed has a way of dealing with this. But the coot fights back. She flaps her wings and skirts across the surface of the lake. The flash of water, splash, 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 splash. Then she dives again. Deep, deep she goes. And then when she rises, the gulls are gone.